And now, it's time for the Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin.
Hello, listeners. I hope your summer is going well. It is blazing hot here in Missouri, and we are so thankful for air conditioning. It's wonderful to curl up in the cool air and read a book. Beach or poolside reading is also great, too. The book I'm here to talk about today might just be exactly what you're looking for if that is your vibe. It's called Takes One to Know One and is part of the Jesus Revolution romance series by Marline Williams. I'm so excited to talk to Marline today. She's actually my first repeat guest here on the show, and we had so much fun when we talked in September that we knew we had to bring her back to talk about her newest release. I hope you'll have as much fun listening as we do talking together, and that you'll go out and check out her books. Also, please make sure you stay tuned to the very end of the interview because Marline has some listener exclusive teasers just for you today. So you will want to be sure to check that out. I do have a sad update. In my last episode, my husband Joel joined me to talk about things going on in our lives, and we mentioned how excited we were to be expecting a baby early next year. Unfortunately, since we recorded that, we lost our baby through a miscarriage. It's been a difficult couple weeks, but the Lord is sustaining us, and we are trusting in His goodness even still. He's been right here with us every step of the way. If you'd like to follow more of my journey, please check out my social media at author Erin Mifflin. You can keep up with our other life updates and find out more about my debut novel, which releases next April. And that's definitely something to look forward to. Now, let's bring in our guest. Welcome back, Marline. Now, you are the first repeat guest on the Well-Read Llama, and I just enjoyed.
So honored.
Yes, I enjoyed our chat so much last time that I had to have you back on to talk about your new release. So, how does that make you feel?
Oh, well, I am honored to be a repeat guest on, I think, the most adorably named podcast out there. And I'm tickled, really. Before we started recording, we were talking about how there's so many authors that are out there, and it is a joy to talk with our fellow authors. So I'm always excited to talk with fellow authors like you. And I'm especially excited because this book kind of barged its way into my life, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Oh, yes. Yep, me too. Now, you contacted me last summer about doing an interview, and I have to admit, I was not that familiar with you before then, but we talked in September, and I had the chance to read your first book, and then we've been following each other online. And it's clear how much you truly enjoy interacting with readers through social media and your newsletter. And here on this show, we've talked about a lot of different parts of writing and how long the work and the waiting can be. And all of that is true. But I wanted to ask you, how much fun do you have as an author?
I think I have an inordinate amount of fun as an author. I do. You know the scripture in, I think it's Psalm 45, but don't quote me on that, where it says that you have received the oil of joy more than your fellow whatever. It's like the king. So it says that, you have the oil of joy more than your fellows. And I'm like, I feel like I was not baptized in water as a child, but in the oil of joy.
Aww.
So I think I tend to have more fun than most people at anything. I just, whenever I see a picture of myself as a baby, I'm always laughing with this big, loud laugh on my face. And I'm like, I must have been a pill for my poor mother. But anyway, so I have a lot of fun, and I wouldn't do it if I wasn't having fun, because it's not, for me, unlike some other authors, it's not the breadwinning kind of thing. I'm not doing this because I'm driven by economic extremity. I'm doing this because I absolutely love doing it, and it is genuinely fun for me. Not all the aspects are fun, but most of them what does Mary Poppins say? In every job that's to be done, there is an element of fun. You find the fun and poof, the job's a game.
That's right.
That's how I feel about writing. I feel like I'm running through a meadow of daisies barefoot, turning cartwheels every once in a while. That's what it feels like to me.
That's wonderful. Well, let's talk about your new book, Takes One to Know One. What can you tell us about this story?
Well, this is kind of a departure for me, Erin, because the first two books follow a certain character. And this book was kind of a swerve. Many of the characters are in this third book, but the point of view is a little different. It's a different character that takes the main stage or the spotlight. And I was a little nervous about that because I'm somewhat new to writing novels. And I thought, how do I maintain my narrative voice, which is distinctive, and still make this first person and not make them all sound the same? You know, as authors, we try to make each character distinct and unique and recognizable. And I thought, well, I want this character to be obviously different. But at the same time, it's a rom-com, so she can't all of a sudden be, like a dismal person. She has to have a funny side to her. And I prayed a lot about this and said, Lord, help me to find the humor elements in this that are going to make even this woman who takes herself a little too seriously funny, but not mock her. As an author, we don't want to mock our characters. So that was very different for me. It's set on the West Coast, and none of my books have been set on the West Coast before. It's set in Southern California in 1975 in Hollywood and Malibu. So I did a lot of wonderful, fun research on the 1970s in California. This is at the tail end of the Jesus movement. And of course, California was the beginnings back in the late 60s, early 70s. So it's the idea of what happens when someone who was at the beginning of the Jesus revolution and moving through the years, and suddenly the atmosphere that she is in is not as receptive to sort of a boisterous Christianity that was in evidence during the early years of the Jesus revolution. So it was a different idea. And I was in prayer a lot, and I was so excited when I got to the end of this and said, wow, that really worked. I'm so happy. This gives me the freedom to move into other first-person points of view and not necessarily make them all sound. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I hope that makes sense.
I know exactly what you're talking about there.
Good.
And I love talking about, how you just bathe the project in prayer and, just every step of the way, seeking God's wisdom and how to do that. And, that's so important.
Oh, yeah, it really is. And I think it's something that you can kind of take for granted as a Christian, just like, well, of course. But when you're inviting the Holy Spirit into the, not just into the mix, but like, here, take the steering wheel and, tell me where this should go. And as a pantser, someone who writes by the seat of their pants, not by plotting, which I admire but cannot do, that for me, it is an absolute necessity to be in close contact with the Lord to just make sure that I'm moving along, what he wants me to say.
Now, this book was originally scheduled to release in September, but you moved up the release date to July. So what prompted the decision to change the timeline?
Oh, that was a God thing too, Erin. I honestly had no idea that I was going to release it in July. And then it got to be May and the book was done. And then I didn't want to sit there and like twiddle my thumbs for another couple months. And if you have a chance to look at the cover, it's very 1970s California, sunshiny. The whole cover just screamed summer. And I thought, if I can get this out in summer, it'll qualify as a beach read instead of people reading it in September and then thinking, oh, I really would have liked to read this in June or July because it's so summery. So the whole book takes place in the summer. And I thought, I'm just going to beg the Lord, can you make this happen? And we did. It just came out a couple of days ago, and the response so far has been very positive. And this means I can get started on another book.
Yes, that is exciting. And do you have any more Jesus Revolution romance books planned, or are you going to be starting on a different project?
That is a great question. And I thought I knew the answer to that when I was in the midst of this book, because I thought this book was it. I thought this was it. It's going to be a trilogy. We're all done here. And then one of my characters from book one raised her hand from the back of the room and said, but what about my story? And I was like, oh, no. I think we're just going to make you a novella. And she's like, no, I don't think so. So she's on deck. And I'm very, very excited about this book.
That's great. Now, when I read your first book, All Men Are Liars, I really enjoyed the immersive 70s vibe. You got the language, the clothes, the music, and the musicians. It really transported me back in time. So, what are some of the things you personally enjoy about writing books set in the 70s?
I love this question because there are very, very few people that actually write in the 70s. In fact, you can count them on one hand as far as I've been able to discover. And particularly rom-coms. I think I'm one of two writers, Christian writers that write 70s rom-coms. So I look at the 70s because I lived it. And I loved it. And there's parts of it I wish would come back. But it was a decade that's unlike any other. You had Jesus on the cover of Time magazine, like this psychedelic looking Jesus. And Christian rock music was born then. The feminist movement was born then. The earth movement was born then. Civil rights movement was highly active. You had all kinds of rights movements. So it was a very cause oriented decade. And you had rebellion and revival happening at the same time. And so it was very tumultuous. There was free love and freedom in the air. And you had the bicentennial, which we're thinking about now, of course, because we're in the middle of the 250th. So in the middle of all of this social upheaval, you've got newly baptized Jesus people who were doing soul searching, and they were their decisions, their life was countercultural. And that's what I like to put in. That's why I love to write these books, because it's built in tension. You've got nobody playing by the rules, and that's what 70s was. We were all countercultural. We were all anti-establishment. we were determined to sort of build a better world. I was a teenager and a college kid during the 70s, the early 70s. And so I know what that feeling of upheaval is like. And it's almost as if you feel like anything could happen. There's no inevitability. It's just sort of a wide open thing. And that is marvelous for a romance writer, because you want to keep that feeling of what's going to happen next. You know, how wonderful, what could happen? And anything could happen. In the 70s, it felt like it was, anything could happen. And that's why I love the 70s, because it's so, you can go off in a million directions, and there was so much going on that you have all these opportunities to set your love story in an extremely dynamic era, and know that there's built-in tension and conflict from the outside, which contributes, depending on the character, on the inside tension or the inside conflict.
Now, these books can be classified as romantic comedies, as you've mentioned. So what's your take on keeping Christian rom-coms funny and swoony, but still spiritually authentic?
I think that's a great question. I think it's about truly getting to the core of your characters, because my goal in my books is to get to know my characters myself, and then bring them out in a way to the reader so that they think, oh, I would know this person on the street if I met them. They wouldn't just pass me by. I would know them. And the spiritual authenticity, I think, comes by not being afraid to put your characters in a situation and have them do the wrong thing. Because so many times as Christians, I think we want to sort of guard our characters and just not let them make a false step, because we don't want to set a bad example in our books. We want our books to be uplifting and edifying. And we think, well, if I have them do that, that's a terrible thing for a Christian to do. I don't want anybody to think that's what Christians should do. But Christians make mistakes. And if you allow your characters, or if I allow my characters to make mistakes, and then they live through the consequences, which can be substantial, and they learn from them, and they understand what the Lord is teaching them in that, I think that makes for spiritual authenticity, and not just have everything go perfect. And as far as the funny and the swoony part, I just return to Song of Solomon or Song of Songs, and I just say, my books are kind of like Song of Solomon and bell bottoms. That's what I think of. They're very passionate, and I just think I want my love stories to be as real as the spiritual aspects, not without being, it's still closed door for sure. But we as humans have emotions and physical reactions. And I think to not acknowledge that, or to sort of sweep that under the rug, is to maybe make it, in my mind, less authentic. You don't have to get graphic about it, but you certainly can, I don't know, do your character a disservice by making them sort of an automaton when it comes to physical reactions or physical realities. So that's the way I see it. And I know not everybody agrees with that, and I respect that. But my books are built for adults, not children. So I try to keep them where a modern reader who is used to all kinds of shenanigans, literary shenanigans, to be able to read my books and think, wow, this is really Tinker Toy. This is, this girl doesn't really feel anything for this guy. Look how she's acting. So I'm conscious of that. And I want to make the characters breathe and give them the opportunity to be a little more real. Sometimes you read a book and you think, the two characters, the man and the woman in this book, you could pick them up and put them down in any circumstance and they would act exactly the same way. And I don't like that sort of interchangeable parts kind of characters. I like very unique, very, these are the characters that we remember. Anne of Green Gables, we remember her. We feel like we know her. Jo March, we feel like we know her because she's different than Amy, and she's different than Meg, and she's different than Beth. So that's what I strive for. In a rom-com, people are funny. When they're not expecting things to happen and they react in a way that surprises even them, that's kind of what makes me laugh. And a lot of word play. I tend to like to see what happens in a sentence when I put it in a boggle cup and shake it and throw it out. I'm like, oh, that's a funny way to put it. So those are the things that make me laugh.
Oh, yes. That's really good. I like that answer all the way around.
Good. I'm glad.
Now, is there a scripture that was meaningful to you as you were writing? It takes one to know one.
Yes, and I'm glad you asked about this. This book is maybe one of the more personal, revelatory books that I've written, because after my divorce, which was a shocker because my husband and I were both very dedicated Christians, so the divorce completely blindsided me. And I spent far too long wandering in what I'm going to call the wilderness of sin. And the Lord in his mercy called me back just completely. As far as I know, there was nobody praying for me. There may have been, but I never heard anyone say to me, oh yeah, I was praying for you for that 25 years. So I just think the Lord in his beautiful mercy called me back. And there is a verse in Hosea 2:15 and 16, and it's actually part of my epigraph at the beginning of the book. And it goes, therefore, behold, I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak comfort to her. And I will give her her vineyards from there. And the valley of Achor will be a doorway of hope. And she shall sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt. And that, to me, that's my testimony. The Lord took me into the wilderness and allowed me to be there. He allured me into the wilderness. And then he built my vineyards, or the fruitfulness or the outcome, the produce of my writing is from that vineyard. It's from that place of confusion and doubt and fear. And then the Lord, when he brought me back to himself, that was the valley of Achor. And you remember the valley of Achor in the story in Joshua, where the man, when they're going through Jericho, and they're supposed to destroy everything. And Achan, Achan, I think his name is spelled, he preserved for himself a Babylonian garment and some silver and some gold, and he tucked it under his tent and he buried it. And then the Hebrew army went out against the next foe, and they were just slaughtered. They did a terrible thing. And Joshua said to the Lord, why did this happen? And the Lord says, there's sin in the camp. So that valley, that's where that happened. And Achan and his family were consumed. And that's how I feel that's happened in my life. I was in the valley of Achor because I was looking at Babylonian garments, so to speak. And the Lord took that opportunity, that place, that landscape, and he made it a place where that was a place of hope. It was a doorway of hope for me instead of a valley of defeat. And that's where I sing from. And just like in the days of my youth, when I was a Jesus freak in the 1970s, that's a revisitation for me. And that's when I came up out of the land of Egypt. And so that little verse, those two verses, that is the inspiration for one of the characters' spiritual journeys in this book.
Wow. I really appreciate you sharing such a personal testimony. That That is so good. You know how God works in our lives. No one wants to think about being allured out to the desert. No,
No,
no one wants to go
no,
to the desert.
that's not on any too many coffee
Right.
cups, please.
But even still, when God leads us to like a desert or a wilderness season, he has reasons for it and he brings good
Mm-hmm.
from it, even though
Mm-hmm.
no one wants to be there, but
No,
he's
it's
there
not
with
fun.
us. Yeah.
It's not fun.
Well, where can readers connect with you?
Readers can connect with me on marlinewilliams.com, and that's spelled Marline Williams, just like you'd think, marlinewilliams.com. And in fact, there's a lot going on there these days because this is the summer of fun. I have created some really fun things to do, just very summery things. I have a free postcard if anybody wants to request it. It's an actual physical postcard, and it is called the Car Stars postcard. And it is sort of a celebration of some of the vintage cars that show up in my books because I'm kind of a vintage car nut. And each book has two car stars that are vintage cars. And so the card on the front shows these cars, and on the back, there's a fun 1970s trivia quiz. There's a little QR code. And if it's scanned, it will take the readers to my Welcome to the 1970s page on my website, where there are all kinds of things to enjoy, including a personality quiz that will tell the reader which 1970s superstar are they most like. And then once they determine that, it will take them to Spotify to get a curated song list of songs that are sort of typical of that particular type of singer, whether it's like a folk rock kind of thing, or a little more rock and roll, or sort of a mellow, natural kind of thing. So those are all there. And then I also have the three books, or there's a giveaway for the three books that'll be signed and put into a groovy 1970s style beach bag that they can win. And that goes until August. So August 1st, the Marline Mail, which is my free email for subscribers, that will be the August 1 edition, will have the giveaway winner. So if your listeners would like to apply or just sign up for Marline Mail, now's the time to do it, because you can find out about the giveaway and you can also enter. And the way to enter is kind of fun. You get to pick which team you're on. Are you on Team Roland, which is the hero of book one, or Team Cyril, one of the heroes of book two? And with the giveaway books, you also get a free little button that tells which team you're on. I don't know why, Erin, but people love those buttons. So they just love wearing their little button proudly. So there's that. And it's just been a really fun thing to go. I've been going to car shows and handing out the cards, which has been oodles of fun. And there are special thing on my Instagram. You can go to Instagram, you can go to Pinterest, and you can go to Facebook. I'm on all three. Marline Williams author sometimes, because people take your name, do things with it. But anyway, if go to Instagram, they can hook up with the California Sunshine Radio series that I'm doing on Monday, Wednesday, Friday nights at 7:00. The first 12 seconds of famous rock and roll songs, or rock ballads, or folk ballads from the 1970s, you get to guess, and that's only bragging rights. I'm sorry, there's no prize. You just get to say, I knew it. But that's been fun to pick songs that you just know it the minute that you start to hear it. You're like, oh, that's the Eagles. Oh, that's Chicago. Oh, that's the Beatles. I know these, which can be a lot of fun if you have a couple people in a room and you try to beat them at it. So that's the California Sunshine bit. There's another one that's coming up that's about the vintage cars. And there's one also with my character, Helene Hoyle, who is the star of Takes One to Know One. And her particular Instagram thing, which runs on Tuesdays and Thursdays, is the romantic rules that she set up to govern her life. And we all know, if you've ever read a romance book, you know how that's going to go.
Yes.
So it's just a summer of fun on marlinewilliams.com. And I just invite all of your wonderful listeners to join me over there and see what it's like in the 70s. If you didn't live it, you're going to love it by the time you get done with that page. Here's something that's kind of an exclusive for your listeners. My upcoming book, the fourth in the series, is set in, like I said, in the bicentennial in 1976. This book will be set in colonial Williamsburg.
Oh.
In 1976. And I just got back from a research trip there, and I had more fun than the proverbial barrel of monkeys. It was, they were setting up for the 250th, and they are on fire with that. So that's really, really wonderful. And also there is coming up in Christmas, there will be another book that's sort of like a giveaway that's coming up, that's going to be a paperback. It was a giveaway last year. It's coming in paperback, and that's called Miss Martineau Takes the Snow Train, and it's a 1930s screwball mystery. So that's coming up. And there's also, I'm going to send you a link to put in your show notes that is perfect for today. It is again, it's a 1970s short story, flash fiction, and it's set in the bicentennial at a 4th of July parade. It doesn't get much more 4th of July-ish than that. And so I'm going to send that to you so that you can share that. And it's on my website. You just have to click on the link and it'll take you to the story. And it's called The Spirit of 76. And of course, in my case, it's always the spirit of 1976.
Listeners, please do go to marlinewilliams.com to find out more about Marlene and her stories and all these fun things that she has just for you up on her website. And all of Marlene's books are also available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you are a subscriber, you already have access to these groovy, faith-filled novels. I hope you'll check them out because they really are so much fun and also thought-provoking in their faith content. Don't forget to follow me on social media, and please visit my website, authorerinmifflin.com, to sign up for my monthly newsletter. I'd be so happy to see you there. Until next time, happy reading!
Join us next week for another episode of The Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin. If you'd like to find out more about author Erin Mifflin, visit her Facebook and Instagram accounts.